Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the FPL Stats Fix with me, Tom Campbell. Find me on Twitter at UtterlyTC. And this video is being brought to you in association with FantasyFootballFix.com. So what are we going to do today? We're going to look straight back at game week 6, take a little look at what the stats tell us from those games in conjunction with the notes that I took from Match of the Day and watching the other games. And then we're going to take a little look at some statistical tables that I've built out over the last few days to see whether or not there's anything that we can glean from them. So straight into it. First game was this awesome match between Brentford and Liverpool. And we're just going to check out what I wrote on Twitter initially. So for people who are listening on audio, this won't be particularly relevant for you, but for the people watching on the video, this is just a reminder of the notes that I took, and we're going to look to see if we can augment that with some information from the Fix match stats pages within the FantasyFootballFix.com desktop site. So this was just an awesome game. Really exciting. Brentford, as I said last week on the video, they've become a team, or are becoming a team, I think, that we can increasingly trust more and more, which is cool because it brings a whole bunch of players into our potential selection pool, and we'll take a look at some of those as we go through. But yeah, awesome match. They were good value for their for the point that they got in this game. As you can see, the XG here, 2.75 compared to 2.38. That's pretty damn close, isn't it? And suggesting parity was totally fair. But as I say, I think that this just again illustrates that we've got some players within the Brentford pool of players there that we can actually look to supplement our squads. And I think that some of these people who actually provided the attacking returns are ones to look at, but also, although they conceded 3 to an admittedly, awesome Liverpool team, I still think the defence represents great value as well. So Tony, he caused problems last week, and again this week it was much of the same, really. He sort of impressed me from a creative standpoint as well. So clearly, as a striker, you're expecting that kind of route to goal in terms of scoring, but actually it was quite impressive creatively as well. So heat map probably doesn't lend itself to be super attractive. Appreciate that this is a game in which they're going to spend a lot of the time on the back foot in terms of possession against a good Liverpool team, but still managed to get 3 shots in this match. And as I say, the creative element there, I'm not surprised to see a couple of attempted assists as well. It's just something that stood out to me, that there may be multiple avenues for points for Tony. Let's just take a little look at their upcoming fixtures. It's not actually super attractive, but in terms of playing that third striker, they tend to be ones that you would play, irrespective. So from an attacking perspective, Tony's fixtures would be kind of irrelevant, but obviously you'd prefer them to be favourable. And they look like they improve in the latter stage of the 6 game week span that we're looking at here. I just think he's going to prove to be great value at 6 point. I think he is still 6 point. Let's have a little look. Let's make sure I get this correct. I'm recording this on Thursday. So yeah, 6.3 million. So he has had changes in price over the beginning part of the season, but he's still a differential there, owned under 15% of live teams. And I think he particularly stood out in this game, and again the game before. I just want to have a little look at his average position here. Still nice and central. Still attacking as you'd expect from that kind of number 9, but he's operating in tandem, as we mentioned last week, with Mbeumo as well. So yeah, he really stood out, which was an impressive display. In terms of, I mentioned the defence as well, and I think we looked last week when we were looking at the statistical tables, weren't we, that Janssen, 4.6 million, was also just someone who I think is maybe sneaking under the radar a little bit. Like, average position's kind of irrelevant for a centre-back there, but he did have a shot in this game. And if we just take a little look, let's have a little look at his returns thus far this season. This is a Brentford defender, of course, so looks assured of selection in terms of the minutes played, doesn't he? And actually he's picking up nice returns throughout. So no surprise that he was in evidence when we were looking at defenders with a goal-scoring threat from the beginning few game weeks of the season. So game weeks 1 through 6, it's been impressive. I think he's going to he represents terrific value at 4.6 million. Not owned by many, 8%. Some people have already picked up on that. And we looked at their fixtures a few moments ago. West Ham away, Chelsea home, that's tough. Leicester home, I mean, they've been a bit of a maverick team, conceding a lot of goals, but still scoring, as we know. That you would expect that they would improve that defence as well. And then it does get easier at 10 through 12. So I think there's a lot to like about Brentford. And in this game, that was certainly in evidence. From a Liverpool perspective, I mean, I've called out Jota here, 7.7 million when I took these notes. The owners are just so unfortunate. I mean, don't want to go on too much about it because it would be probably quite painful for people to think back. But if we just take a little look at Jota's output there, I mean, it's unbelievable, really. A lot of penalty area actions, as you can see from the heat map there. I'm just going to take a little look at his shots. I'm interested in the XG of both. 0.46, that is super high for an XG. If you think of penalty, sort of 0.75, 0.76, I believe, and 0.32. I mean, these are great chances. They really are. Obviously, he notched one of them from that centre from Jordan Henderson, but there was another terrific chance, and it could have been masses more points again for Jota. So his owners can feel pretty hard done by, I would say, in terms of how he got on in this game. Firmino's now back in contention, playing well, did well during the Champions League in midweek as well. So that's going to be a headache selection. He could have had many more points over the intervening game weeks whilst Firmino was convalescing. But it was just, again, to sort of highlight, it wasn't a bad pick at all, and he definitely could have returned more in this game. Whether or not you choose to keep hold of him with the slew of midfielders in and around that 8 million sort of through 6 million bracket, that's going to prove more difficult, I would suggest, ongoing. Salah, he sort of seems immune from any talk of removal at the moment, and this game again sort of backed that up. So let's just have a little look, actually. I'm interested in the bonus points for this particular game. That's interesting that Jota's still pretty high for Fabinho as well. That midfield's conductor in chief, I guess, but you have to come quite far down for Salah. We know that it's always a problem for him with chances off target and the way that the bonus point system is weighted, shall we say. But look, the guy's an FPL marvel, isn't he? 12.6 million still owned in well over half of all live teams. Fantasy Football Fix tells you ownership across the whole game, and then more relevant, I would say, is the stat you can see there in bracket in terms of the live team. So that's just where teams haven't made a transfer in several game weeks. They are deemed to be redundant dead teams. So that's kind of the pool that you're up against. So he's in the majority of teams. Yes, he's got a tough fixture up next, but there's nothing to suggest. I mean, look at those returns. It's just awesome, isn't it? So yeah, he's proving his worth, even though he's an absolute fortune, 12.6 million. Somehow that's still terrific value. So yeah, I guess the salient points here are that Liverpool obviously still have great assets that we know. Don't need to talk too much about those, really. Brentford-wise, I think they are a team that, as I say, the pool of players is expanded to include Brentford now, and there's options at both ends of the field. So Liverpool's upcoming run, yes, huge game against Man City upcoming in game week 7, but it's a nice run thereafter, and fixtures just don't really come into your thinking with the guy like Mo Salah. So let's have a little look what we had next. The next game was the Man United's home defeat to Aston Villa. So the XG here suggests that Man United were unfortunate not to get something from the game, but that wasn't my interpretation of how this went at all, actually. I did not like or enjoy United's performance. I actually didn't like it midweek as well in the game that they've just completed against Villarreal. Again, they won that game 2-1 with a last kick of the game goal from Cristiano Ronaldo, but I really didn't like their performance in the slightest. And yes, they've won in midweek, but prior to that, this was 3 losses in 4 games. And as I say, the Villarreal game was not encouraging. I didn't like the style at all. So I'd say there are big question marks over inclusion of Man United assets, full stop, actually. And we'll come on to talk about that in a few moments. From Villa's perspective, let's just get into to have a little look at the stats here. I thought they were terrific. I thought there was lots to recommend them. I've been actually really impressed with them. Since they sold Jack Grealish and bought in a bunch of other players there, it's going to take some time to potentially embed those players and react to the change of losing their talisman. But yeah, they've impressed me a great deal, actually. And there was a lot to like about this performance. I'm just going to flick back on my notes as well. So one of the most sort of under the radar picks, it was Douglas Louise. So in terms of that 5th midfielder slot, let's just bring his heat map up here. So attacking the Man United end up here. He was heavily involved in the attack from what I saw on the highlights. 3 attempted assists is terrific. 4.5 million. Let's just check if he still actually is 4.5 million. Because that was a few days ago. Yeah, he's kept his price. So 4.5 million. If you're looking for that 5th midfielder, you could do worse than him, in my opinion. He looked like he was linking play and the advanced areas of the pitch. 3 attempted assists. Set plays as well. That's interesting that he was on some set pieces. And I don't know. I think there was enough there to suggest that he could become a useful bench option. Whether or not you don't want to be playing him every week, that's probably a different conversation. But a speculative shot here, that wasn't really his game. It was more of a creative role he was asked to play in this game, and he played it well. So I like Douglas Louise, 4.5 million, definitely. In terms of the attacking side, I mentioned Ollie Watkins last week, and 7.3 million. Ollie Watkins, he was. It was the sort of display where I think it's kind of threatening a big haul. Like whether or not that's ever going to actually play out in reality, we will see. But there's certainly indications there to me that could definitely happen. He had these 2 shots. One of them was a big chance really, with a expected goal of 2.8 there. You can see from the inside right hand channel. Another one from just outside of the box as well. Look, 7.3 million is quite a lot of money to be paying, but if you're in a position whereby you're looking for, say, a Patrick Bamford replacement, if his injury status is confirmed that he's going to be out for a prolonged period, he's going to come into the thinking. If we just take a little look at the Villa stats, let's just use Courtney Horse's house, however you want to pronounce it, to use their fixtures. Let's have upcoming fixtures. So we know Tottenham are in a degree of difficulty at the moment, shall we say. Wolves home and West Ham home. Excuse me. They got three nice home games upcoming in the next 6. Looks encouraging to me. So look, Ollie Watkins, it would be a punt, definitely. Big differential, but I think his performances on the eye test is suggesting that there could be returns around the corner there. And the stats don't completely dissuade me. 2 shots in an away match. Just want to check his average position as well. Playing on that inside left, let's just compare that to Ings. Yeah, very similar actually. So the fact that Smith is operating with both of them is encouraging as well. Suggests that I think those two will develop a partnership that we will see improve, and they have creative players behind them, as we know. So I'm still encouraged by Watkins, quite bullish on him. The other one I wanted to mention, so I'll just quickly mention Matty Cash actually. So last week he scored his first goal for the club, and he operates on the right hand side of the defence, but pushes up forward in the way that Smith's team operates. He was impressive again from a potential attacking perspective. I do think there will be returns there for Cash later down the line as well. Picked up 5 points in this game, 21 bonus point system. Right, it's not massively encouraging in a tight game, but there were chances there that he created a good one for Matt Target in this game. So he may be an option ongoing if you're looking for a route into that Villa defence. Although I would actually say, and from my notes, this guy, Emi Martinez, is a bit of a marvel, isn't he, in FPL? I mean, we had that problem with the international challenges that have been faced because of the COVID restrictions and what have you, travel restrictions. But Martinez at 5.5 million, when that price was announced at the beginning of the season, people balked at that. But they're looking like it's looking like it might be justified. He's picking up his. I'm smiling because of the bonus points returns, and it sort of brings into question whether or not it might actually be worth spending that additional money for a player who picks up obviously the clean sheets you would get as a team metric we've talked about before. But there may be enough there to suggest that you could spend that additional money if he's going to be continually picking up, significant bonus points system, underlying points to help with the accrual of BPS or bonus points overall. So, yeah, lots to like. I'm not even going to talk much about United at all. I just thought they were poor. Like you can see here, the 28 shots is like you'd be impressed by that, but I didn't like the way that they were shooting. They were sort of speculative shots. You can see a clump of shots from outside the penalty area. Obviously they had the Bruno Fernandes missed penalty, which is the one that stands out there. Your eye gets drawn to, but it was quite selfish attacking play. I didn't really think that they were combining particularly effectively. Solskjaer's got his work cut. He's got such an amazing squad of players, but to get them to work cohesively has not happened for him so far, in my opinion. Thus far, I think there's some problems there. So, not particularly impressed. Didn't think it was a good performance from United in this game. There are injury concerns now over Harry Maguire, Luke Shaw. Wan-Bissaka didn't play in midweek, but that was due to suspension. So the defence hasn't been great despite the awesome form of David De Gea. So I have called on Man United full stop as assets within the FPL game. So next up. So the Chelsea versus Man City game. A sort of title elect type teams. And Man City were awesome in this game. I mean, Chelsea are a great team working under a great manager, as we know, but the XG here of 1.51 to Man City in an away match at Stamford Bridge against that defence, and only giving up an XG of 0.23, as I say, on the road to Chelsea. Wow, what a performance from Guardiola's team. I didn't have masses in terms of FPL call-outs here. I think Grealish played well, and I think in terms of having that more, if you want to put a little bit more money into midfield at 8 million, you could do worse than Jack Grealish. Pep played him as a false 9 at times in midweek. From what I saw in the PSG match, I mean, that's not going to play to his strengths at all. But in the game against Chelsea, he saw a couple of efforts well saved. I want to see how they played out here from the stats on the screen on Fix. Oh, look. Yeah, this is more where I'd expect him to be operating on that left-hand channel and cutting into the penalty area. This is good from an FPL perspective. We like that. That can be routes to goal and creatively as well. 3 shots, it's fine. And yeah, these are decent opportunities as well. Well, that one's not so much. But a 0.33 XG there. And this one as well, they've rated that low. But I mean, they were 2 decent chances to me, and they were quite encouraging. If you own them, or if you're looking to pick him up on wildcard, I think you could do worse than Jack Grealish based on what I saw. It's going to be interesting how he coexists with the likes of Kevin De Bruyne, Raheem Sterling, who's come back into contention. It seems Riyad Mahrez, etc., as we know. But let's just have a little look at his minutes. 86 in this game. For a Pep player and a Pep offensive player, you'd take that all day if you were offered those minutes returning in a 6-game period, right? So, I think there was enough there to be encouraged by Grealish. More to the point, though, there were defensive call-outs. So Cancelo is getting a lot of attention, understandably. He was terrific in this game, operating in conjunction with Grealish, I guess, down that left-hand side. 6.1 million is a lot to pay for a defender, I guess, but I'm seeing him as similarly to Grealish. Look at that. The run of 90 minutes in across a 6-game period is pretty much unheard of for Guardiola fullbacks. So he's just someone who I think makes quite a compelling case to own. Still only owned by 12.5% of live teams, which I'm surprised about. I suspect that will go up in readiness for the next game week because a lot of people are on wild cards and are looking to put more money into their defence. Let's just have a look at their upcoming fixtures. Look, it's as hard as it gets, isn't it? Away at Anfield. Fix still projects that there's avenues for points there. I can understand that. But this upcoming run here is lovely. A home game against Burnley. Away match against Brighton. Didn't think Brighton were particularly impressive against Palace on Monday Night Football. Speaking of Palace, they got a home game against them. So you'd be playing Cancelo all game weeks really anyway. But those fixtures there look like there could well be more clean sheet points to come. And he was more attacking as well in this game. I'm just going to take a little look at his average position. Let's have a look. Yeah, actually operating primarily in the opponent's half at Stamford Bridge. That's quite the accomplishment for a fullback. So yeah, he looks like someone to definitely focus in on. I just think it came across that how good defensively they were in this. Laporte, 5.5 million. He put a chance just wide. Actually, it was a decent cross to the back post. Excuse me. I suspect it would be this one. Yeah, De Bruyne cross. But whether or not it's worth spending the money on Emerick Laporte versus Ruben Dias or Cancelo, I'm less compelled to do that, even with the price saving. I've historically really liked Laporte, but there remains a question mark, doesn't there, over the centre-back usage with Stones, who's still, England's first choice, really. And in terms of him coming back into the side, you wouldn't be shocked for that. Whereas, as I say, Cancelo looks to have that left full-back berth locked down. So, yeah, super impressive. Chelsea-wise, look, it's a hard game, right? It wasn't something that wasn't a game that they impressed in at all. There wasn't much to read into that. I don't think it's time to panic and abandon ship. I know they've lost to Juventus midweek as well, and they're clearly missing Mason Mount. But still, defensively, they are going to be super strong. They've got an awesome run of fixtures. And if we look at the Fixture Analyzer here, game week range of 7 through 12, Chelsea sit top of that from a defensive perspective. Let's just have a quick look on defensive. Second as well. So not time to lose faith in Chelsea as my read on that. In actual fact, I believe it would be time to back them more than perhaps we have done already. So, I don't think it's time to abandon ship on Chelsea at all. It was a difficult game and they were deservedly lost, in my opinion. But they will bounce back, I'm sure. Leeds versus West Ham. Let's have a little look and move on. Excuse me. So another good game that interesting, entertaining game. This is what Leeds offer you when you're watching. But they sit in the relegation zone. Not that we're paying too much attention to league positions just yet, but it's not been a good start for them in terms of results, has it? It's been a concern, definitely. And my notes here. So we're going to talk about Rafinha, Antonio Benrahma. That's cool. Let's start with Rafinha. So there was a doubt about Rafinha from a fitness perspective, and Bielsa did confirm that he hadn't trained. But look, they're reliant on him. And so it proved again. Let's have a little look at how he performed in this game. So he's operating on the right-hand side. Penalty area actions is encouraging for a midfielder as well. Let's have a little look at his... This is just in 68 minutes as well, managing that injury. Look, Fix actually gives you the status, I guess, in terms of his availability as well, with direct verbatim quote from Bielsa there as well. And yeah, he's managing a knock at the moment, which you need to be mindful of. But if he's available to play in any shape or form, I think Bielsa will be playing him. He's relatively well owned. He's a great price at 6.5 million. If you look at his returns so far, attacking returns in 3 of the first 6, he looks like someone I'd be encouraging people to hold on to, definitely. From his initial outputs, 3 shots, 3 attempted assists in 2/3 of the game. Plenty to like about that. There were 2. The goal actually was was mirrored, I guess, by another chance, which was so similar as well, and so he could have returned even more. I think there's enough there to suggest that he's a hold or even a buy if you don't already own, provided that knock doesn't worsen. Look, Leeds were depleted though. They had a few injuries, and I can't encourage you from statistical observations and watching the eye test to go anywhere else. Like Bamford, as we know, has got an injury of which the status is still unknown at this point. And there may be some more clarity on that in terms of the press conference later on this week. But right now, he's not someone you could look to, despite those fixtures, which is disappointing. And defensively, they're just too porous. They just play too much, too open. So can't really look there either. In terms of West Ham, it was another example of Antonio just being this powerhouse striker. He spoke so bullishly and confidently after the game about wanting to continue his goal-scoring exploits and be at the top end of the goal-scoring charts come the end of the season. I think the main thing with him we worry about is of course his history with injuries, and West Ham playing in Europe. That may prove to be a problem. Right now it's not, and he's a player that looks to be performing irrespective of opposition. Like, yes, of course, this is a good game to play in, but look at that, 7 shots, 4 attempted assists. I mean, he was everywhere, and he looked like look at all those ones in the box as well. Pretty high XG for several of these chances as well. Could have been a much bigger return in reality. He looks like an awesome option ongoing. Have a little look at his return. So for people who kept the faith following his suspension, so it proved worthwhile, despite that price drop. As was that 1.7 over 1.7 million managers ditched him. I suspect a lot of them then bought him back in the game week after. Nothing wrong with that. And he's still owned by a huge portion of the game, almost half of managers in terms of live teams. So yeah, he looks like a definite hold or buy, irrespective of the fixtures. In actual fact, we can just take a little look at West Ham's upcoming fixtures, because they've had a relatively easy or kind run, I guess you could say. Brentford, people will see Brentford home, I think, and admittedly they did just concede 3, albeit to a great Liverpool team. My read is that they actually defend well, so I think this will be a much tighter game than perhaps we would intuitively maybe think. But it isn't actually a super great run of fixtures, is it? With a Benitez-led Everton away from home, Tottenham, more of a question mark over that. But that game is derby for West Ham and tends to bring about upper levels of performance from both teams, really. Villa, Liverpool and Wolves, those are not easy games. So fixtures-wise, you wouldn't necessarily leap all over this, but just the way that Antonio's playing, the confidence he's got and the talismanic figure in this side suggest he's worth including. Let's have a little look what else I saw. So Ben Rama is another player that's well owned after his start to the season. He had a brilliant shot excellently saved from Meslier. Souček and Fornals also went close. I don't think I like them defensively. As I mentioned, the fixtures aren't great for West Ham. I think we'll score in the majority. I'm West Ham fan, so I think West Ham will score in the majority of those games. But defensively, I don't think there's enough there to recommend them from the eye test observations. And indeed, I think it's going to be Antonio. Ben Rama's such a nice price, and having 5 shots, albeit them low quality XG. So there's 0.08, 0.02, 0.2. One in the penalty area, slightly better chance as well. Plenty of opportunities presented themselves in the game against Leeds. You'd expect that for your attackers, and there's enough there to keep the faith with Ben Rama, I would think, albeit, as I say, the fixtures do stiffen. Let's move on. So, I mean, Everton beat Norwich 2-0. The XG here, 1.94 to 0.59. It's hard to really give too much insight here beyond the obvious, is how I term this. Like, Norwich are just dreadful at the moment and have been for a long time, particularly defensively. And I just think it's a viable FPL strategy to just target them in terms of them conceding lots and lots of goals. And let's have a little look at the stats to see how this played out. So, I mean, Everton weren't at full strength. I think it's worth pointing out as well. If you look at the lineups here, they're still missing their sort of front two, if you like, in terms of Richarlison and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Like their strongest side would not look like this at all. Ben Godfrey operating on the right-hand side of a back four isn't what I would expect Benitez to want to pick. So that's worth acknowledging. And they beat Norwich easily in spite of that, really. So from a player perspective, the ones that we've been looking at, I guess, have been the likes of Doucouré and Gray, and I guess Townsend as well. So Doucouré was a standout in this game. 5.6 million. He was really box to box, allowed to get a little bit further forward under Benitez. We've observed that in the first several game weeks of the season, and I don't expect that to change. Actually, you can see here it's kind of an all-action heat map from a box-to-box midfielder, but there are ventures forward here. I was asked a question on Twitter. Again, you can get hold of me at UtterlyTC, as to whether or not I thought Doucouré was a better pick than Demarai Gray. Like, I don't think there's going to be a lot in it over the course of the season. They're similarly priced. I know that's not a particularly helpful answer, but what I'm basically saying there is I don't think picking either of them would be a mistake. I don't think there's a compelling case against either of them either. I think Doucouré's slightly more assured of game time and assuredness of selection, bearing in mind, as I say, there'll be other players to come back for Everton. But they both played well in this game. Gray playing without sort of attacking partners up front there that he would be used to. I'm not convinced in Salomon Rondon at all. I don't think he's fully fit. To be fair, I think he's a bit out of shape, if I'm honest. But I like both these players. So how did they confirm? Let's have a compare rather. If we look at the average position, yeah, so Gray operating quite advanced because of that depleted attacking lineup, and Doucouré deeper, but as we saw on his heat map, he was allowed to venture forward. So either of them represent a good choice, I would say. It kind of depends on your playing style, I think. Andros Townsend operating on the right-hand side, he took a penalty in this game and scored it relatively comfortably. I mean, went in, so that's good, but I'm not convinced he'd take them if Everton were at full stretch, actually, and I don't actually think it was the best penalty in the world. So he's still an option, but I think you're going to be hard pushed to favour Andros Townsend over Doucouré or Gray, personally. Let's have a little look. Yeah, so observations from the highlights were, although Gray did pick up his assist, he didn't feature much, and I guess that's one of the downsides of having to operate in this system without DCL and Richarlison being available. Whether or not that will play out once those guys get back from injury, whether or not that's in game week 7 or beyond, I wouldn't have thought so. I think he'll become more involved. So those are the two players to target there. Norwich, just forget them, and as I say, target them freely, I guess, from options in terms of scoring goals. What have I put here? I have put not yet convinced on Everton defensively. I think that's worth just expanding on. So I've gone harsh on Norwich here, haven't I? But I think that's justifiable. But Everton did still, give up opportunities here. So they gave up 10 shots. It's not horrendous, but in a home match against a weak opposition, it's not fantastic either. And there were some big chances here as well. Yes, they were missing Seamus Coleman, but I'm not convinced actually on Everton defensively. I think that if you're going to invest, it's going to be more from an offensive perspective. Either that cheap midfielder, Doucouré or Gray, that's a manager choice there. And then Richarlison and Dominic Calvert-Lewin as and when they get back to fitness. Just want to take a little look at their run, actually. Doucouré's owned in 5% of teams. Just having a little look at that. Away match at Man United. I've slagged them off as well, haven't I? So, although it's not an easy game, I'm not particularly threatened by that. I was scared of that game. That's nice, though. A couple of home games in a row, West Ham and Watford. So, I just think these players are ones you can fit into your squad. They're not going to break the bank, and I think they will return drip feed of points over the season. Let's move on. So the Leicester game, this was kind of interesting actually, because Leicester have been struggling defensively for some time now. So the game was 2-2. XG wise suggested that Leicester were unfortunate not to win the game, but of course the XG won't acknowledge the fact that Chris Wood scored what would have been an injury time or very late on in the game winner, because it was ruled out for a super close offside as well. So, Leicester defensively remain a problem, and Rodgers faced into that, to be fair to him, at the end of the game. So whether or not they're going to look to change that tactically, we shall see. But right now, it's hard to recommend any of the Leicester defence. Someone who is not hard to recommend, despite his price, is Jamie Vardy. So let's have a little look at Jamie Vardy, because he's someone who's, in spite of these returns that he gets season on season, he doesn't get spoken a lot in sort of the rhetoric that goes around in relation to the front of the forward options, I should say. So let's just take a little look at Vardy. So 11 points in this game. 11 points in this game following an 8-point return the game before, and he's already had a double-digit return in game week 3 and started with an attacking return as well. 10.4 million, so he's actually had a price drop, and he's owned in just over 12% of live teams. So a bit of a differential there, isn't it? It's an awful lot of money, I guess, to spend on someone who you're going to struggle to captain. I think that would be the case against. I was chatting to my friend of mine about this week, about spending this money on this sort of player who you're not typically comfortable captaining. So that's the case against. Upcoming fixtures, look, Vardy can score against anyone the way he plays on the shoulder, as we know. Presumably still not taking their penalties as well. But I just think the past seasons is what I wanted to highlight here. Look at that consistency since the 2015-16 season. So went over 200 points there. He's replicated that 200 point. That's such a benchmark for a great season. He's done that twice. But even in the intervening period, 161, 183, 174, 187. It's just consistently excellent returns for Jamie Vardy. Like every season he's returning this, and bagged a brace in this game. The reason why the score is a little bit lower than it would have been for a brace normally, even with what I presume is the top BPS, yeah, easily. He scored an own goal, and it was a poor header into his own net, so that's why it was quite low. But I just liked his performance again, and he's just someone who, he's not probably the most attractive of picks, is he? But what I will put here is up to 40 points, and he missed a good chance as well. So it's just someone, I think, if you're looking to differentiate yourself and wanting to go different from the field, depending on how you like playing, then Jamie Vardy was someone who stood out there. And looking back at the historic data, it's a compelling case there. Lookman has signed from Fulham, 6 million. He impressed as well, and he created a good chance. So I just want to see where Lookman's average position was. Let's have a little look. Yeah, pretty far forward and operating on the right-hand side of the attack there as well. I don't think there's enough that, it's just another player in that 6 million kind of mid-priced or mid to lower priced midfielder. And I really think that's going to be a bracket that we as managers can look to just exploit and hop around. I think there's just a ton of options there that we can use, and he looks good in this game. 4 attempted assists, that doesn't surprise me. I think he was substituted in this game, and I think he was, and there was not a good reaction from the Leicester support to that particular substitution, but because he played well and they were looking for a goal, but he looked like a potential one just to keep an eye on there. I liked his performance, and average position wise there, 1 shot, 4 attempted assists in under 80 minutes is fine. It's good for an attacking midfielder. As I say, Chris Wood scoring that goal, it was so close to being offside, and they were resilient. They're a tough nut to crack, aren't they? Cornet looked quite lively. I think 6 million striker for Burnley. I'm never mindful to encourage people to look too far into the Burnley attack, just the way that they actually play. Wood's probably an exception to this, actually. Let's have a little look if I can just try and find him here. Have a little look at his past seasons as well. So very consistent. Lower, it's different gravy, isn't it, from the Vardy points we just looked, but then he's priced a lot lower. So you can probably be confident that it's going to be another season around that 130, 135, maybe 140 point return if he keeps fit. And Norwich at home next week. I've just basically told you that they're a goal waiting to happen. So could do worse for next week, but don't particularly like Burnley from an attacking perspective ongoing. And as and when they tighten up, they will become viable in terms of the traditional selections there. Tarkowski, me, Loughton, Matty Taylor. They're always going to be cheap options that we can look to use later on. Let's move on. So the Watford game, this was quite interesting from a FPL perspective, because although they're not potentially the most attractive sides, when you look at it on a basic level, a superficial level, there are options there, definitely, and they all kind of featured in the highlights from what I saw. So St. Maximin's getting a lot of attention. I just want to see whether or not his price has changed since I took those notes. That's the Watford game. So they're still operating with no Callum Wilson. So I just want to see lineups. And you can see here Fixtures suggesting correctly that he's operating as the focal point of that attack. Whether or not that's going to change as and when Callum Wilson gets back, it will need to alter in some capacity. Whether or not that's going to cause a sort of dampening of his output, that's something to bear in mind. But in this game, he did, was worth talking about that. It's interesting that he's featured a lot on the left-hand side. 2 shots, 5 attempted assists. Again, super active and involved. I put here, creative perspective, I thought, from there. And he did have a one-on-one chance, which he should have done better. So, great price, and still somebody to recommend. My caveat to that would be, obviously, it's Newcastle, we know. And I do suspect his role is likely to change when Callum Wilson comes back, which will be soon. It may not be in time for Game Week 7, but it should be following the international break, which takes place after that. Let's have a look at our upcoming fixtures. Not in love with those. Let's have a little look at the Fixture Analyzer, actually. If we look at attack difficulty and see... So this is game weeks again. The range is 7 through 12. Fix doesn't like it. So, and I suggest I would be inclined to agree with them on that one. So, he's not breaking the bank, is he? And it was an impressive performance in this game. Particularly creatively, but I think there's a little bit of cause for concern. It's actually gone up to 6.8 million. Excuse me, since I wrote those notes. What else did I observe? So there were some other players there, who had chances. Joe Willock, Murphy, Longstaff scored an awesome goal, had a good chance as well. I say an awesome goal. I thought Foster should have done a bit better, maybe. Clark at the back, Joe Linton. Look, none of those players I would particularly recommend, to be honest. But again, I mentioned him last week, and I'm going to mention him again. Danny Rose, from a Watford perspective, 4.3 million. Let's see if I can spot him. If I sort alphabetically, that's probably the easiest way of doing it. Look, a one-pointer playing for Watford is not going to bring too much attention, but I like the price. He was taking a couple of corners and seemed to be a potential route in. So look, he had 376 transfers in, so maybe one or two of them were because of my observations last week. Who knows? Upcoming wise, that's not great, is it? It's just a budget enabler, really, but he does seem to be assured of that selection at that left fullback, and is on some set pieces. So I'm not going to believe that point. Don't want to make this the Danny Rose fan club at all, but just an observation there. He was. I've said he's playing advanced. Let's just see if that's backed up. Excuse me. This is this side. Oh no, look, it's an average position. Yeah, quite a lot of that attacking play, which is good. And into the opponent's half. So the eye test observation backed up there as well. So there may be an attacking return in there for Danny Rose. I mean, you're not going to be playing him in the tougher fixtures anyway. He's going to be a make weight in the defence. If you do need to save some money, there would be someone to consider potentially. Look, Watford-wise, the front three I mentioned last week that operating as this trio of Dennis, Sarr, and Josh King. They seem to be working cohesively, and they all had awesome chances again in this game. I think Sarr looked fantastic. He looked really dangerous. Again, they've got Leeds in the next game, so despite the fixtures stiffening afterwards, if you've got him, it's a definite hold for the next game, and you can expect him to get chances. Like whether or not he'll convert them, we'll see. But it was another encouraging display, I would say, for people who own Ismaila Sarr. I liked his performance, and I like how he links with his other attacking players in Dennis, who also had many shots there, you can see as well. And Josh King, who I think I'm right in saying had a goal ruled out as well. Yes, he did, just offside. Dennis at 5.3 million. He was subbed early. I've put that he's my least favourite. He's also the cheapest, so that might come into your thinking, but I think if you're going to spend money there, I know it's a bit more for Ismaila Sarr, but you do get the extra attacking point for a goal, which is important. And if we look at their, if we do all players and do average positions, wow, Tom Cleverley, throwback. You can see Dennis and Sarr are kind of comparable in terms of how far forward they are. King actually operating slightly deeper, but it is that front three. So I think Sarr's the standout. I think he's worth the additional money, personally. Both teams creating chances. I think they are relevant from an FPL perspective. I do still like St. Maximin. Just a few caveats, as I say there. That was it from a match of the day perspective. So now I'm going to go on. So these ones don't have notes. The next couple of fixtures, but I just want to take a quick look, and we can just freewheel it, really. I've watched some of them were watched live, and some of them I watched on Match of the Day too. But Wolves bounced back well. I mean, it was such a disappointing result in the game before, the Brentford game. But this was good from Wolves, I thought. I think great to see Raul Jimenez score, and you know what? I think he comes into the thinking, actually. So have another little look at the fixtures. So Fix quite likes the run, which you can understand with Newcastle, Villa, Leeds in the next three games, I should say. And then it doesn't even get horrendous after that as well. So people have been bringing in Wolves assets for a while because of this run, and I still think it looks encouraging. We've just seen how Watford created a lot of chances against Newcastle. Wolves early on in the season created a lot of chances. Southampton, it's not an easy game, but Wolves gave them a difficult assignment, actually. I just want to see how Raul Jimenez's heat map played out. Him scoring, I think, will obviously be that confidence intangible confidence. Whether or not it's going to play out in a bunch more goals, we shall see. But I've liked Raul Jimenez for a while. I actually just want to remind people about this guy. So he had that horrific head injury. And he's coming back from that, easing his way back. I don't have heaps of data here, but look at that. 100. I said 200 was the benchmark. This is a Wolves team, right? I mean, they impressed when they came into the league, but 194 points a couple of seasons ago, off the back of 181 the season before. If and it's a big if, he is back to his former self. That's what based on 2 seasons worth of data, that's what you can expect. So I like him. I think at 5.3% of teams owned, 7.5 million. He represents a great option. I really do believe that. I think the comparison I was going to make for this video was to Ollie Watkins, who's 7.3 million. I don't like their fixtures as much. He is a little bit cheaper, but I don't like their fixtures as much. Jimenez, to me, is more talismanic, and it wouldn't surprise me to see more of a drip feed of points starting to come through. Let's have a little look at this game, see whether or not I can back that up at all. Yeah, 2 big chances there. And they were sort of self-made. Well, I say self-made if you happen to have Jose Sarr, good on you. It's about as good a feeling in FPL as you can get as a goalkeeper assist when he picks up a clean sheet as well. So, yeah, that was definitely something to smile about. But Jimenez was the standout for me in this game. Defensively, I just mentioned Sarr. I quite like him as an option as well. Don't need to look at his heat map. That's not going to be particularly relevant, but look at that BPS for grabbing that assist as well. So I like him as an option. Actually, it's really annoying, totally fair, but really annoying that he's at 5 million rather than 4.5. The temptation will be, if you get him, then you'll always be looking to pull that money out of the goalkeeper and look just like an Aaron Ramsdale, for example, to save you that money. But I think he's been impressive, actually, and as I say, their upcoming fixtures are kind, so that could be something. I'm not expecting you're going to get a glut of assists or anything like that, but it does look like a viable option to me for sure. Was there anything else? I mean, Traore was benched in this game. It's just becoming a player that's just impossible to trust with any kind of confidence, isn't it? Kind of run out at the end there. I just don't think you can justifiably spend the money on Traore. I think if you're going to go to the Wolves attack, I think it's time to look to Raul Jimenez. Southampton, you've still got Livramento, who's priced so terrifically. They're still getting attacking threat in this game. Shot and 2 attempted assists. I think I'm right in saying he has started every game. Let's just have a little look. Certainly has. And just early withdrawal in the away match for Man City, which you got return anyway. 4.2 million. They've had it tough, and Chelsea away is not a game in which you're expecting that to get any easier. But I mentioned last week, their October is nice. So at that price, I still think Livramento is worth considering. Beyond that, it's a no from Southampton. The next game that we're going to talk about was the North London derby. So Spurs were just rancid in the first half. They phoned it in. It was kind of embarrassing, and that should be called out, of course. From an FPL perspective, I don't think it's super relevant, really, in terms of, you wouldn't necessarily look to their defence, for example. But I actually think from an Arsenal perspective, we shouldn't focus too much on the plight of Tottenham, but we should focus on the attacking cohesion and potency of the young midfield. So I mentioned it last week on how the eye test was suggesting that they were trending in that direction against Burnley, and so it proved it. It kind of came to bear in this game as well, in what should be a tougher game, right? It didn't prove so. Like they rolled Spurs easily in that first half. Smith Rowe, just a player I really like. He obviously was in a lot of teams at the beginning of the game week 1. Have a look at his average position. That's kind of interesting. Operating on that left-hand side there, and being able to cut in and shoot. He actually ghosted in and scored his goal coming from that position, so I guess it shouldn't be that surprising. I'm just going to have a little look at Saka. Yeah, Saka playing on the right-hand side there. That's kind of cool. I like that. So that interchangeability is... It probably only adds to the threat, actually, of them, and I suspect Odegaard would be more central. Yes, indeed. And we said that they operated really well. Thomas Partey's the one that sort of holds things together. Xhaka's picked up an injury now, hasn't he? But I really like Smith Rowe. I think at that price as well, a 12-point return. I mean, I'm not going to come across as a genius for recommending Emile Smith Rowe after that return, but only owned in 4.2% of live teams. 5.3 million is a great price. Slight question marks over the minutes. He's a very young player, and I think you're going to have to accept that as Arteta manages those minutes. But I still expect him to play the majority. I think he's... look at that trending of heaps of transfers out. That's going to flip for sure. Minus. I think we can expect that to change and change soon. And if we take a look at these fixtures for Arsenal, Brighton, we'll talk about them in a minute. Not an easy game, but not the worst. Palace, Villa, Leicester, Watford, and then obviously a tough game against Liverpool. 5.3 million though is an awesome price, and I really like him. I think he represents terrific value in this particular game. Let's have a little look at his statistical output there. 2 attempted assists. His average position we've already looked at. Advanced, albeit on the left-hand side, this one, which is kind of interesting. Touch heat map. He's involved as well and linked well with Aubameyang throughout the game. So, yeah, I really liked him. I haven't got any notes to compare to. I'm just trying to think back to the game. Aubameyang himself, I mean, I made the case for Jamie Vardy, didn't I? So, albeit Aubameyang's price is comparable, a little bit cheaper, I still think getting a route into the Arsenal attack is slightly different from the Leicester one. I think you're going to have... There's such a difference in price between, Saka, for example, and Smith Rowe compared to Aubameyang, whereas with Vardy, it's that talismanic figure. So I don't think there's enough there from an Aubameyang perspective. Yes, he has been great in the season gone past, but I wouldn't be recommending him just yet. Defensively, I mean, Ramsdale made an exceptional save from a deflected shot. I think it was from Lucas Moura. They still conceded. 10 shots were given up. I'm not in love with the Arsenal defence yet. I think they have been improving. And you'd expect them to concede some chances to Spurs in the North London derby, just in spite of how insipid they were in the first half. But it's the prices, right? The Arsenal defence, there's so many cheap ways in. You've got Ramsdale's obviously going to be the one that people focus on at that 4.5 million price point for a goalkeeper. You just play him every week and accept the tough fixtures. Definitely viable to do that. Tomiyasu as well. He's 4.5 million, whereas Ben White, I think, is 4.4 million. Let's just see whether or not that's still the case. And look, 0.1 might not mean anything to you, but if you're wildcarding, it can make all of the difference. 4.4 million. Yeah, it's in a lot of teams. I suspect that would still be from the beginning of the season. There's just no attacking threat there, is there? Look, 0 shots so far this season. Attempted assists. That's good old Norwich. They can be relied on to help people's attacking stats, can't they? But Ben White, I think 4.5 million, you can only expect defensive returns from a team metric perspective. Whereas Tomiyasu, based on my interpretation of his game, which is a super small sample, kind of more inverted in this game. Quite interesting, slightly more infield than perhaps we would expect. I think there'll at least be a chance of an attacking return there. So if you're wavering between the two, I think I would favour Tomiyasu. Spurs, just awful display, really poor. Came into it more in the second half, and yes, they scored, and it was only an amazing save from Ramsdale, which kept it to a 2-goal deficit, but still can't be recommending Tottenham right now. The Palace game, I only saw the second half of this one and the subsequent analysis that followed on Monday Night Football, but Brighton weren't actually that good in this game. They've started the season really well. I know league position is probably not that important at this stage, but they're in the upper echelons of the league, and they should be proud of that. And I do think Mopé's returns have slipped under the radar here. So if we just take a little look at Mopé, he's actually got 4 goals this season already, which is sort of quietly impressive, isn't it? Not loads of shots, but he's shooting in the majority, in all of the games, in fact. 6.5 million. So what's the comparison there? You kind of got Tony, as I mentioned, would be decent comparison. Raul Jimenez is $1 million more expensive, so maybe not completely comparable there. Brighton, I just want to see how many shots they had in this game. Yeah, only 8 shots. I mean, Palace the same, right? It sounded like a crap game, to be honest. I don't want to belabor this game too much, but Mopé 4 goals in the first 6 games is a great return. Defensively, they're just pissing people off now, aren't they? Sanchez not making enough saves. They're not keeping enough clean sheets. Duffy's still really cheap, but you do wonder whether or not that's his place is going to be assured longer term, depending on how Potter sets that team up. Conor Gallagher is probably the main person I wanted to mention. They were waxing lyrical about his work rate and stuff on Monday Night Football, which is fine. That's an important trait. But actually, it was still encouraging just from an attacking perspective in terms of how that might actually result in points for FPL owners. So just the 1 shot there, no attempted assist. I think that's a bit misleading because there were sort of pass before the final pass and what have you. I think he still lends himself to suggest that he's going to be a fine pick at that price. Let's just have a little look. So he picked up his assist in this game. Oh, they're still fine returns, aren't they? He had that huge haul away at West Ham, and he looked super impressive. Similarly in the Spurs game as well. Still looks like a great option to me. 5.7 million. It's still really cheap. Yes, it's crept up a little bit, but I still think that's fine. Let's have a little look at their fixtures. So whether or not you'd be playing Conor Gallagher in every match, for example, that's something you'd need to think about. I actually want to talk about that in one of the tools that Fix has available. But that's their upcoming run, the home game against Leicester. As I mentioned, they've been porous at the back, haven't they? And this is the sort of thing where I think the rotation planner can really come in. So let's have a quick look at that, actually. So if we do... not the comparison matrix, actually. Let's do... How best to do this? Let's have a little comparison matrix, actually. This could be a good way of doing it. So, what we're going to do here is take Gallagher. If you've got a straight-up decision between 2 players, that's kind of cool, the intelligent suggestion. So based on me choosing Conor Gallagher, Fix then gives a bunch of players who we may want to pick to who are similarly priced, I guess, in the same position. But actually, we're going to take a little look at Emile Smith Rowe, someone we've talked about already. And you can filter the game week range, which is interesting, but I actually want to look across the whole season. No, actually, let's do the last 3 game weeks instead, actually, because of Arsenal's rough start to the season. I'm going to do averages per game, so a small sample here. We're just going to choose a bunch of different... I'll be lazy, actually. So Fix gives the common attack stats, so that's really cool if you're in a rush. And you can basically get a quick comparison side by side of those metrics and see which ones you prefer, I guess. So minutes played, yes, we mentioned that Smith Rowe's minutes have been managed, but points wise this is average rather than totals. BPS, that's not super high, so I wouldn't be giving that too much credence. Shots, that's interesting. Gallagher getting slightly further forward, or certainly being able to fashion more opportunities to shoot from attempted assists. So it just gives you an idea in terms of doing that side-by-side comparison. I want to find... where is it now? Excuse me a moment. don't think it is player heat maps, although I'm just going to show you that as well, actually. This is quite cool as well. So on the desktop version, it will default to selecting your first player. So let's have another little look at Gallagher. And that'll bring up his heat map, and you can again filter your range. We'll take a look at the whole range to start with, rather than the truncated one we were just looking at. And the second player, so you just needed to click on second player there to start selecting your the player to which you want to compare. Arsenal and Smith Rowe. And you get that side-by-side comparison, which is kind of interesting. You can click on any of these and it will show you their respective facet, I guess. So average position for Gallagher, defense to attack, versus, let's have a look at Smith Rowe. I think that central one's going to be interesting because we saw Burnley right-hand side and then Spurs left, so he's probably still finding his preferred position in that team there. But it's an interesting side-by-side. And then you've got this, let's focus on the attacking radar here. You get the comparison there with the lighter one, the blue one here being for Gallagher, and the darker one, the black one, being for Smith Rowe. And you can see for the different metrics who's leading the way. So it seems to me, based on this, that Gallagher's returns are more impressive. That to me is reflective of the historic returns, of course. Might not be indicative of the upcoming, because you'd need to overlay that with the fixtures that we've talked about as well. But Fix will then highlight which player wins, if you like, by one of the ones in blue. So you get the chance there to run through. And I do just want to find this rotation planner. Where is it? Might be in here. Rotation planner. That's the one I want to take a look at. So rather than a player comparison, what you basically want to do here, is that too wide a game week? No, that's fine, that range. So it's quite an expansive range. If I want to see how two teams rotate with one another, I can double click on these to hone in on those. So we want to take a look at Palace, so that's 2 clicks, and Arsenal. And effectively then it will show how those two teams look. All right, so if you're talking about, for example, whether or not you want to play Smith Rowe or Conor Gallagher, and how that would look if you ever get into a position of, one has a really tough fixture, how do the others look? Quite quickly you can visualize this. So there may be an opportunity to play them both, for example, in game week 9. That would be a good example of Villa home and Newcastle home. You could easily play them both in that. That's probably a more difficult one, so that would give you an indication you're going to need to make that decision potentially. But actually, you get an idea here of the run that you could have for those. So really useful tool there, the rotation planner. So if you're wildcarding Smith Rowe and Gallagher, for example, as a component parts of your midfield, that would seemingly work from a rotation planning perspective, which is super cool. So in the last couple of moments, I just want to show you another player table that I built. So we looked last week at the Optastat sandbox. I'm going to do more on that in game week 8, or maybe after game week 7, actually do more of a deep dive during the international break and look at the first 7 fixtures and see what we can find. That could be kind of interesting. That will definitely be interesting. The custom stats builder we mentioned last week. So this is basically where you can build out your own stats tables. And because we've now had 6 game weeks, rather than viewing the 6 game weeks as a collective, I wanted to see whether or not there's anything in the last 4 that have stood out. So I created a last 4 standouts table here, and we can take a little look at what that returns and what that shows us. I've not described this table. You can do, particularly if you're making it public. That can be really useful. Last 4 game weeks only. That's a filter that you've got available for you. Okay, cool. So these are the stats that I've included, sort of ones that I will... let's just wait for that because it's just returning a little bit more data. You can either default to the total, which is sometimes useful, or you can show averages per game, which is normally what I focus on as well. So I'm just going to wait for that to build up again. There's a lot of information here because I've not omitted any price points. For example, I'm pulling back 11 stats, so it can take a little while to build, but these stats are completely customizable, right? So you can choose which ones you want to include in your analysis. I've opted for attempted assists, which is a fix, specific metric. It's not a big chance created, for example, but an actual attempt for assist can be useful if you're looking to identify creative players. Expected assists, we know, is comparable to the expected goals metric that we use. And again, this is a creative metric. Expected FPL involvements, that's really getting into the nitty-gritty of the game. Hopefully this doesn't hang. It might just be that I've made the selection of data too wide, but it'll give you an idea of the sort of thing that you can create yourself. And I really like these things, these expected FPL points and expected FPL involvements. It's something that's really specific to the game itself. I'm just going to refresh this and see whether or not this we can actually take a look at this and be able to filter it. Apologies, it's just the fact that the data is a bit too wide. Let's just try this once more. Custom stats builder, and I really like the ability to tailor those tables. Maybe the learning point for me there is, to make them a little bit more specific and not return quite so many stats, but certainly the ability to create those custom stats and then modify those is really useful. And then you can filter on those to pick up your players or pick up the analysis that you want to do. What I'll do, guys, on that one is I'll do more of a deep dive into how you actually create your own tables and the sort of things that you can actually expect to then filter on. You can pre-do that. I think it's probably my internet as well, actually. So yeah, apologies for that. It's a bit of a disappointment right at the end there. But hopefully you still enjoyed the video. And as I say, during the international break, what I will do is do more of a deep dive into how you can create your own tables, how you can then filter those, and make sure that you can identify those trends and how they've differed from a particular suite or set of game weeks from the overall. So thanks very much for watching. Apologies for at the end and the technical difficulties right at the end. I'm sure it's on my side rather than the Fix websites, but thanks very much for watching. If you like the video, please just hit that like button. Do give me a subscription as well. Subscribe to my channel. I'm going to keep these videos coming. I'm going to be reviewing the game weeks ongoing. And again, this video is being brought to you in partnership with fantasyfootballfix.com. My name's Tom. Find me on Twitter @utterlytc, and I will see you in the next video.